When I went into nurses training, my friend and I, which I knew since we were friends in grade school since third grade on, we said we're going to be nurses. And so we decided, we were in training 6 months at nurses training when war broke out. On the day of December 7th, we were getting our nurses caps. That meant that we passed our beginning period of nursing, and they call it probies, and we would get our nurses hat at that time, that like we graduated, and all the ones that didn't make it up until that time in 6 months were gone. We started out with 20, and we had 10. We had a basic training first at Camp McCoy, Wisconsin. That's where we first went the first day. And then we were there until we were finished with our basic training at Camp McCoy, and then we went to Battle Creek, Michigan, and that was a large amputation center for the soldiers. In training at the hospital, in my small hospital here at St. Joe's in Elgin, we'd get maybe 2 amputations in a year, and not that sometimes even. So then when you come into a whole building just specializing in amputees, it was quite a shock to us. You learn fast. And they were the best patients I ever had. I mean, the soldiers, all of them. I never had one crabby patient. They were all wonderful. We went to the South Pacific. We were told that we were going to go to the Mariana Islands, and that was a group of islands, and we were going to go to Tinian. So there was Tinian, and there was Saipan, and that Saipan you could see, it was what we call a stone throw, but it was much longer, about a half a mile, but you could see the other island. And also there was Guam. And on this trip, which I remember getting to the island, was quite significant. The Indianapolis was in the harbor of in Guam, that was, where they were getting fueled. And for their trip back, they had, to nobody's knowledge, we knew what that was, but they had parts of the atomic bomb on that ship, which nobody knew. Yeah, and but that was a secret mission, and they had deposited it at Tinian, and so we just met them as they were leaving, and of course they were overjoyed to see American girls, and they did a lot of waving and whistling, and we liked that. We'd wave back, and but then that was a terrible thing that happened to them, because halfway on their way back, they got torpedoed, and their ship was completely gone, and a lot of them lost their lives then, and some were on rafts, but sharks infested the water. They lost a lot of men, an awful lot of men. On the island itself, for the big, large B-29s that were going to be there, they needed a larger strip of land, and the Mariana Islands were the best suited for that. Luckily, we were not attacked on our island, so we didn't have the casualty, but there were a lot of casualties with the airplanes, with the pilots. The B-29s at that time, earlier time, were not perfected, and they had a lot of accidents. There was a lot of changing around they had to do. There was a lot of crashes just because of the B-29s. They were so large to handle. There were some Japanese up in the hills that would, snipers that would shoot at you, so we were very confined. We had barbed wire fences around our Quonset hut, and we couldn't go out of there unless we were with a company of soldiers. The only thing we got to do for enjoyment, and it was so hot because it was the Pacific, is swim at the beach. And that was called the Yellow Beach on Tinian. After the bomb was dropped at Hiroshima, when we got off for just to be fueled up in Nagasaki, we had a chance to go off and see the destruction. I didn't see hardly anybody walking around except one little girl had her little brother strapped to her back, and I happened to have some chocolate, and I wanted to give her that. War is a sad thing. It's something if you could just prevent it, because it's a terrible thing on civilization. So if they ever learn how to discuss problems without going into a war, it would be great, because the loss is so great on both sides. That's why even dropping the atomic bomb, I felt when I saw the damage, I thought, oh, how can you fight a war and just destroy everything? Not just the battlefield, but you're destroying life, all kinds of young life and everybody's life. And I thought that would be awful. We could just eliminate wars like that. It makes you think, more seriously of life. Make the most of it, what you can, and pray, because there won't be no more wars. But keep on praying. And this is a Enola Gay that was snapped on the day after they came home, and we had a breakfast on Tinian, and we had breakfast with, by the way, with the pilots that were on the B-29 air mission, and we could ask them questions. I got to shake their hands. I got to see Colonel Tibbets at that time. But by the time they dropped the bomb, and we were successful, and that saved a lot of American lives, because we were set up on Tinian because it was going to be a big medical center also, besides being a B-29 airstrip. We were, going to know that was going to be an invasion of Japan, and we would have had casualties galore, because we had a lot of medical units from other states that were set up, and that would have been a big hospital there. And then we would have, the ones that were real critical, we would have sent back to the states, and because by that time we had pretty well control of the islands along where we were, and we would have had just shuttle them back to the states for the serious ones, and the other ones that was minor, we would have been able to take care of. When we set up a hospital in Japan after the war was over, then we went to Japan and set up this hospital for the American soldiers. There was a lot of supplies. We didn't even have to make a hospital. We used beer cans to put our thermometers in, and they didn't have running water. We had to use Lister bags. So it was quite difficult making up a hospital there. And it was an abandoned post office we set up our hospital. And we did that about 2 months after the bomb was dropped, or not even that. And this picture here was taken when I was in Japan after the bomb was dropped. And it was so unusual, because when I went in there to take a picture, it was getting around Christmas time, and I wanted to send a picture home to my mother and Dad. And so when I went in there, it was just like a little shack, little rundown thing, and there was a curtain. And while I was sitting there in the chair getting ready to snap the picture, this cute little Japanese boy came out with a kimono on. He was just darling. And I turned my head just to smile at him, and that's when he snapped the picture, which was good because it was natural. We'd get maybe a day off. I'd go swimming if I could, but there wasn't the beaches there. And the name of the island was Fukuoka, on the island of Kyushu, and that was in more of the southern part of Japan. And so the only thing, there wasn't that much to do because everything was so bombed out. But that's when I got my dog. It was a little white Chihuahua. They named her Bambi. And they didn't even want me to keep it at the hospital, so I had to leave it at a Japanese prison where American soldiers were in charge taking care of it. So they took care of the dog for me until I went home, until I got ready to come home. And then I found out that the ship does not want any pets either. So I had to find out what to do for that, and that's when I smuggled her. But she was very tiny; it didn't take up much room, and I put her inside my jacket. And I said, "Boy, I'm going to give her a little flake of a sedative that I have." And I thought, "Boy, I hope she sleeps," and she did. I think they all got a buzz out of me smuggling my little dog and trying to keep that a secret. I think that's what was the joy, mostly because we were going home and everybody was happy. When you get home, they give you immunizations and things like that, and all the paperwork and your discharge papers and all that. And that's at Fort Sheridan. And then I had my friend George, that was my husband, that became my husband later, and he came and picked me up at Fort Sheridan and took me home. And then we celebrated. His mother was a great cook. In fact, she used to be a cook here at Elgin Academy in the 1920s. I went back to return to my home school hospital here at St. Joe's and worked for a while until I got married. I married a G.I. Joe. He was a private, and he was over in Europe for 4 years, close to 4 years, not quite. And I have a wonderful grouping of all his medals on a big picture frame. Freedom is a wonderful thing. It's why we fight that we have to, because without it, existence would be zero. And freedom is a great thing as long as you treat freedom respectfully, and freedom not to be careless with it.